Drop points, clip points, spear points, and trailing points. Just wanted to show you a quick compare and contrast between some of the most commonly used blade styles within the knife world. I would argue that the drop point is the most popular blade style amongst not only knife people, but the knives themselves in general. Very, very commonly used blade style, and for a good reason. Very good jack of all trades, all arounder, good strength, good enough for piercing, belly, good for slicing, pretty good for slashing. You really can't go wrong with a drop point blade, typically. Now, what is a drop point, technically speaking? It has to have a belly of some kind, and the spine of the blade must gradually slope down into the tip. If there's no slope right here, the spine was completely straight, and the cutting edge just sloped up into the very end of the spine. That would be a straight back, or what some call a standard blade style. Now, there's variations within the drop point. You can play around with the blade style a lot as long as you just meet the two criteria, as far as I know anyway, of the spine sloping down into the tip and then having some kind of belly right there. This is also a drop point, even though it looks completely different from that Cold Steel 4 Max Scout we just looked at. But again, same deal. The spine is sloping down into the tip, and then we have a little bit of belly right there. Certainly a lot less belly, and we have more of a spinal slope, if you will. This is certainly going to be better for piercing than that blade, not just because it's a lot smaller, but the actual geometry of it. If we upscaled this, it still would be a better piercer than that one, but the tip is going to be a little bit more delicate. But nonetheless, this is still a drop point. Another drop point, spine slopes down. We have a swedge on this one, and then we also have a recurve on the cutting edge. You can see it just barely curve back out. It's like a very, very minute kukri. Last drop point I'll show you right now is this CRKT Foresight. Again, spine is curving down into the tip, and we have even more of a recurve on the cutting edge down here in comparison to that Ozark Trail we just saw. Also a drop point. So you can see there's a lot of variation within the criteria of drop point. Let's move on to the clip point. What is a clip point? Essentially, it's like you took a drop point, but you just clipped off a tad bit of it just above the tip, right where the spine is, instead of the spine gradually sloping into the tip flush and protrudes out, and then it swoops inward and then slightly, just ever so slightly back outward into the tip right there. Let's take a look at another one, the CRKT Golf. We have a distinct spine right here and then a clip within the spine that meets the tip. Last one I'll show you right here, Boker Kalashnikov XXL. Another more standard looking clip. What's the difference between a clip point and a bowie? Well, actually, a bowie is not a blade style. A bowie is a type of knife that happens to be accommodated by a clip point style blade. There technically is no blade style called a bowie, but it's a common misconception. Let's look at this clip point right here. Oh wait, maybe that's not a clip point. Trailing point. It's basically like you took a clip point, but you give it an even more extreme upsweep. Oftentimes they even move past the handle. This one's not a very extreme case. Some even categorize this Espada Large from Cold Steel as a clip point, not a trailing point, but I've heard both things. Blade styles, although they have their rules, they have their technicalities, generally speaking, a lot of it seems very subjective. If you ask 10 different knife people, what is this blade style right here? You may get a dozen different answers. It's very subjective. There's always little subtleties. There's always modifications. And as we come out with more and more blades, more knives, more companies try different things, people start giving blades new names. So some call this a trailing point, some call it a clip point. There's no technicality as to what differentiates a trailing point from a clip point other than the fact that a trailing point slopes up a little more than a clip point. But how much does a clip point slope up? Where's the comparison there? There's no technical rhyme or reason to it as far as I know, but if you have a more precise answer, please let me know down in the comments below right now. And finally, let's look at one of the few spear points I have, this Cold Steel Paradox, the faux balisong style folder. What differentiates a spear point from a drop point, even though this blade right here may kind of look like a spear point has to be symmetrical. The belly of the cutting edge, or however the cutting edge looks, has to mimic the spine. As you can see, this is pretty much symmetrical. This is not. This may look like a spear point to some, but technically it's actually a drop point. That's what differentiates a drop point from a spear point. Perfectly symmetrical, not symmetrical, amongst other things. So pros, cons, which one's the best? Spear points are going to be best for piercing, just because the tip is very thin and because it's symmetrical, you won't deal with any obscurities or imperfections as you are thrusting, as you are stabbing, piercing, withdrawing the blade. But they typically do not have as much belly as drop points, simply because, again, the cutting edge has to be symmetrical with the spine. So if you had a lot of belly here and you made the spine symmetrical with it, you'd have almost a very circular, wide, fat-looking blade, and that would be a little awkward. I have not seen many of those. Drop points, again, jack of all trades, not going to be quite as good for piercing as a spear point is going to be, but the tip certainly is going to be a lot stronger because it's more wide. And again, we have more belly here, so the more slicing capability. It's going to be better for slashing. I would argue better for defense if you are using slashing and chopping motions as opposed to thrusting motions. And then the clip point is kind of in between the two. It's like you took the advantages that a drop point has, that nice wide old belly right there, but you gave it just a little bit better piercing capability. So although the tip is going to be weaker than a drop point's tip, it will stab better than a drop point will. Personally, as far as looks are concerned, my favorite is the clip point and even the trailing point if you want to go there. I just think they look very aggressive, very classic bowie style knife look to them, if you will. What are your thoughts? Do you prefer drop points, spear points, or clip points? Is this actually a trailing point right here, or is this just a clip point? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe, hit that little bell notification if you do not want to miss weekly knife and gun videos. Mannix out.